Eleanor stood by the tall, arched window of their penthouse apartment, her hand gently resting on her rounded belly. 7 months pregnant, she radiated a quiet beauty that seemed to glow from within. The city lights shimmered behind her like jewels, and the laughter from their latest dinner party still echoed faintly through the marble halls. Everyone always said she was lucky, married to Damien Langford, heir to a billion-dollar real estate empire, with everything a woman could dream of: luxury, love, and now, a child on the way. From the outside, Eleanor's life looked like a fairy tale written in gold. But lately, something had shifted. Damien had grown distant, not overtly cruel, but colder. He no longer kissed her good night without being prompted. He skipped her prenatal checkups with vague excuses about last-minute meetings. At parties, he avoided eye contact, smiling only when others were watching. Eleanor noticed all of it, but her heart refused to accept what her instincts whispered. "He's just stressed," she would say to herself. "The company is expanding. This is just a phase." She wanted to believe that. Needed to believe that. After all, they were about to start a family. How could a man be pulling away when they were about to welcome new life? Damien, however, wasn't just distracted. He was cheating. Vanessa Hart, his personal secretary, was everything Eleanor wasn't: young, provocative, and ruthless. With sharp cheekbones and a sharper tongue, Vanessa had clawed her way into Damien's bed under the guise of late-night work sessions and urgent calls. She played her part well in public, offering Eleanor sweet smiles, gently touching her shoulder, even buying tiny baby socks as gifts. But behind closed doors, she rolled her eyes at the mention of Eleanor's name and called her damaged goods. Vanessa didn't just want Damien's affection, she wanted Eleanor gone. What Eleanor didn't know was that Vanessa was fueling Damien's resentment. Whispering lies into his ear about how Eleanor had changed, how she was needy, emotional, overly sensitive. "You don't even seem like yourself anymore," Damien had said one night, and Eleanor had blinked at him, confused and hurt. She was carrying their child. How could she possibly be herself when her whole body was creating life? Still, she smiled through the pain. She decorated the nursery in soft grays and whites, folding tiny clothes with trembling hands. She still cooked his favorite meals, even when he didn't come home to eat them. She still wrote notes on the mirror in lipstick like she used to: "I love you, forever." But now, those notes were left unread. And somewhere across town, Vanessa lay tangled in silk sheets that didn't belong to her, grinning at text messages from Damien, who had already begun imagining a future without the woman he once claimed to love. Eleanor had no idea that the perfect life she was living was a carefully constructed lie, one that was beginning to unravel faster than she could ever prepare for. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when Eleanor heard it. She had come home early from her prenatal yoga class, her lower back aching, her shoulders tight with fatigue. The penthouse was mostly dark, save for the low amber glow of a hallway lamp. She entered silently, not wanting to disturb Damien, assuming he was in his study, working late again. But as she walked past the slightly ajar door to his private lounge, she paused. A hushed voice drifted out: "Damien's." "No, she suspects nothing. She's too wrapped up in baby stuff to notice," he muttered. Eleanor's breath caught. Then a woman's voice, soft but sharp, responded: "Good. Because if she finds out, she'll make a scene, and you can't afford that kind of drama right now. One headline about a hormonal, hysterical wife, and your reputation goes up in flames." Damien gave a dry laugh. "She's already so emotional. Everything is a crisis with her lately." Eleanor's fingers gripped the doorframe. She felt her stomach tighten, not with labor, but with betrayal. She took a shaky step back, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. The voices faded as Damien moved away, still speaking softly into the phone. She retreated quietly to the kitchen, blinking back tears. Her mind tried to reason with her, desperate to protect her heart. Maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Maybe she was misinterpreting. Maybe she was too emotional. That night, when Damien emerged from the lounge, Eleanor pretended nothing was wrong. She served dinner and watched him from across the table as he scrolled through his phone. Between bites, she asked gently, Do you still want this? Us. Damien looked up, feigning confusion. What kind of question is that? You've been distant, she said softly. And I heard you on the phone earlier. His eyes narrowed. So now you're eavesdropping? I wasn't trying to, she whispered. It just sounded like you were talking to someone about me. About how I've changed. He sighed, dramatically setting his fork down. Eleanor, you're pregnant. Your hormones are everywhere. You're not sleeping. You're crying over laundry. Of course you're going to imagine things. Her throat tightened. So I imagined your voice? And a woman's voice. I talk to a lot of women. I run a business. You're being paranoid. She didn't reply. There was no point. He wasn't going to admit anything. He'd already twisted the truth in his favor, and any more questions would only make her seem unstable. Which was exactly what Vanessa wanted. In the following weeks, Vanessa's manipulation grew bolder. She fed Damien lies about Eleanor's supposed emotional breakdowns, told him she cried in public, that she yelled at staff, that she was a ticking time bomb. She's going to ruin you, Vanessa said once, pressing herself against him in his office. You need someone who can actually support you. Damien, already poisoned by Vanessa's words, began to see Eleanor's genuine fears as weaknesses. He stopped calling to check on her. He skipped more doctor appointments. He forgot anniversaries, appointments, and even the date of her baby shower. Eleanor, aching and alone, decided she couldn't rely on him anymore. One rainy afternoon, she took a taxi alone to her OB/GYN appointment. As she lay on the examination table, watching her baby's heartbeat on the monitor, she felt both awe and heartbreak. The baby kicked softly, as if reminding her of the strength she still had. She smiled through tears. It's just you and me now, she whispered. And I'll protect you. No matter what. Vanessa stood in front of the full-length mirror in Damien's hotel suite, adjusting her lipstick with the precision of a woman on a mission. Her reflection smirked back at her, flawless, confident, untouchable. Yet beneath the perfect image, rage simmered. Eleanor was still in the picture. Still pregnant. Still clinging to Damien with her innocent eyes and swollen belly. And Damien, though emotionally distant from his wife, had yet to fully sever the tie. That baby was the final chain keeping him from committing fully to Vanessa. She was done waiting. To Vanessa, Eleanor's unborn child was not just a nuisance, it was a threat. A future heir to Damien's empire, a living reminder of a love that had once been real. Vanessa had invested too much time, too much effort, to be shoved to the side as the other woman. If Eleanor disappeared, the baby would vanish with her. Then Damien would finally be free to build a life with Vanessa, one not tarnished by guilt or legal obligations. The plan came together in her mind like a puzzle. She just needed to play the part one last time, the sweet, helpful friend. So she sent Eleanor a message. Hey lovely. Damien told me he feels terrible for being distant. So we've planned a little surprise for you tomorrow, a private baby shower. Just a girl's thing. He wants you to be pampered. I'll pick you up myself. Eleanor, fragile and craving affection, read the message and burst into tears. For a moment, her heart flickered with hope. Maybe Damien was trying in his own awkward way. Maybe Vanessa wasn't the enemy. Maybe things could be repaired. So she replied, That's so kind. Thank you. I'd love that. The next afternoon, Eleanor dressed carefully in a soft blue maternity dress, brushing her hair gently as her belly shifted under her palm. When Vanessa arrived, she was all smiles and compliments, gushing over how radiant Eleanor looked. Eleanor felt herself relax, grateful for the kindness. She didn't notice the slight tension in Vanessa's jaw as she helped her into the car. Vanessa drove them away from the city, claiming the venue was a peaceful spa in the suburbs. Eleanor nodded, not thinking much of it, until they turned into an unfamiliar, industrial part of town. The streets were narrow and silent, bordered by warehouses and concrete fences. Eleanor's brow furrowed. "This doesn't look like a spa," she said, her voice small. Vanessa smiled too widely. "Oh, it's a hidden gem. Very exclusive. Just wait." They pulled into a deserted alley. Parked near the end was a large, rusted garbage truck with the engine idling. The driver, a rough-looking man in stained overalls, glanced toward the car and gave a subtle nod. Eleanor's breath hitched. Her instincts screamed. "Vanessa, where are we?" "Get out," Vanessa said, her voice flat now, cold and devoid of all pretense. Eleanor's mouth went dry. "What?" Vanessa turned, eyes blazing. "You were never meant to last. Damien deserves better. You were just a mistake." Before Eleanor could react, the driver jumped out and flung open the passenger door. Eleanor screamed and struggled as he dragged her out, ignoring her pleas. Vanessa didn't flinch. She leaned against the hood, arms crossed, watching with satisfaction as the man forced Eleanor toward the back of the truck. "You said you loved him," Eleanor sobbed. "How could you do this?" Vanessa stepped forward and whispered, "Because I really do." Then she turned her back as the truck's doors slammed shut behind Eleanor. The moment Eleanor felt the rough shove against her back, it was too late. She stumbled forward with a startled cry as her hands reached out for something, anything, to catch her fall, but there was nothing but cold metal and the sour stench of waste. The interior of the garbage truck was dark and filthy, a cramped steel cage with no escape. The door slammed shut behind her with a thunderous finality. Her screams echoed, shrill and terrified. "Vanessa, please. What are you doing? Let me out. I'm pregnant." Outside, Vanessa stood by the truck with the driver, unfazed by the desperate cries from within. She smoothed her hair calmly and smirked. "You were just a placeholder, Eleanor," she said loud enough for her to hear. "Damien chose me. You were never supposed to stay. Now you're just in the way." Eleanor pounded on the walls with her fists, her palms already stinging. Her chest heaved as panic overtook her. Her baby kicked wildly, sensing the distress. Her vision blurred with tears and the foul stench overwhelmed her, making her gag. "Please, please, you don't have to do this. You don't have to hurt my baby," she cried. Vanessa ignored her. "Start the compactor when you're out of sight," she told the driver. "Make sure it looks like an accident. We were never here." The driver grunted, glancing around the empty alley for witnesses. He climbed into the cab, and with a low rumble, the truck's engine growled to life. The vibrations shook the floor beneath Eleanor's feet, and fear gripped her so tightly she could barely breathe. She scrambled toward the back, slamming her fists against the door again, her voice hoarse from screaming. Then, as the truck began to roll forward, the unthinkable happened. She lost her footing. The floor was slick with grime, and her ankle twisted. Her knees buckled. Her head snapped backward, colliding with the hard metal with a sickening thud. Her vision exploded into stars, then darkness. Outside, Vanessa began walking calmly back to her car, heels clicking sharply on the pavement. The alley was silent again, except for the slow grind of the truck making its way toward the road. But fate had other plans. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom turned into the alley, its headlights cutting through the dim light. Inside was Leon Maddox, Damien's business partner, a billionaire investor known for his ruthlessness in boardrooms and his eerie talent for reading people. But what few knew was that Leon had always admired Eleanor from afar. He'd seen her at countless events, graceful, poised, intelligent. Too good for Damien. And though he never interfered, he often wondered why such a genuine woman had ended up with someone so shallow. Leon slowed the car, his eyes narrowing at the sight ahead. A garbage truck moving unusually slowly in an alley this isolated? A woman walking away, suspiciously fast? His instincts kicked in. He hit the brakes and stepped out. Vanessa froze when she saw him. "Leon," she said, attempting a surprised smile. "What are you doing here?" Leon didn't answer. His sharp eyes scanned the scene. The truck. The woman's panicked posture. her slightly disheveled look despite the designer dress. His gut screamed at him. Something was wrong. "Why is there a garbage truck here?" he asked coolly. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. Without waiting for an answer, Leon strode toward the truck, waving at the driver to stop. When the man hesitated, Leon barked. "Now!" The truck halted. Leon climbed the small steel ladder and yanked the back doors open. What he saw made his blood run cold. Eleanor, unconscious, her dress stained, her face pale and smeared with grime, lay crumpled in the corner like discarded waste. Her hand was still protectively curled around her belly. "Eleanor!" he shouted, reaching in immediately. She didn't move. "Call an ambulance!" he barked over his shoulder at the driver, who had gone ghost white. "Now, damn it!" As he gently lifted Eleanor out, cradling her against his chest, he shot a look back at Vanessa. There was no sympathy in his eyes. Only fury. She had no idea what she had just unleashed. Leon's heart thundered in his chest as he gently lowered Eleanor onto the sidewalk, his jacket cushioning her head. Her skin was pale, slick with sweat and grime, and streaked with bruises. Blood trickled from a shallow cut near her temple, and her breath came in shallow, ragged pulls. Her swollen stomach rose and fell in uneven intervals, and every second she didn't open her eyes felt like an eternity. Leon gritted his teeth and turned to the garbage truck driver, who stood frozen in horror. "If she dies, you'll wish the police got to you before I did," Leon snapped, pulling his phone out and dialing emergency services with speed and precision. "Ambulance needed. Corner of Bertram and Holloway. Pregnant woman unconscious. Suspected head trauma. I need medics now," he barked into the phone. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed down the alley. Paramedics spilled out of the ambulance, surrounding Eleanor and loading her onto a stretcher. Leon climbed into the vehicle without asking for permission, gripping her hand the whole way, silently praying she'd squeeze back. At the hospital, the emergency team went into action. Leon stood back, fists clenched, as doctors wheeled Eleanor into a trauma room, leaving him behind in the hall, still covered in the dirt and blood from pulling her out. He couldn't sit. Couldn't rest. So he paced. Hours passed. Finally, a young doctor stepped out. "She's stable," the doctor said, adjusting his gloves. "She has a mild concussion and several bruises, but no internal bleeding. The baby's heartbeat is strong. She was lucky. If she had been left any longer." Leon closed his eyes, relief washing over him. "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded. "She's still unconscious. But she's in recovery." Leon entered the room quietly, heart aching at the sight of her. Eleanor lay in a hospital bed, connected to monitors, her hair matted with sweat, a bandage above her brow. The faint rhythmic beeping of the baby's heart filled the room. Leon sat beside her, took her hand again, and this time whispered, "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you again." He stayed with her all night. He didn't leave when nurses came and went. He didn't sleep. Instead, he opened his laptop and began pulling strings. Within hours, Leon's private security team was on the move. They reviewed street surveillance footage, tracked Vanessa's movements, and matched timestamps with the garbage truck's route. The driver's name, financials, phone records, all unearthed. Leon had been ruthless in business for years, and now he turned that same precision toward justice. By dawn, his assistant had sent him everything. Security cam footage of Vanessa guiding Eleanor into the alley, of her standing beside the truck as Eleanor was thrown in. Clear audio clips from a nearby storefront camera. The proof was damning. Around mid-morning, Eleanor stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened fully. She blinked in confusion at the white ceiling, then turned her head, and saw Leon sitting beside her, eyes tired but gentle. "Leon," she whispered, her voice raw. He stood quickly. "I'm here." She looked around, panic flashing in her eyes. "Where? My baby. What happened?" "You're in the hospital," he said gently, brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "You're okay. The baby is okay." Tears welled in her eyes as the memories hit. Vanessa, the truck, the darkness, the fall. Her breath quickened. She tried to kill me. I know, Leon said, voice low but steady. I saw everything. I pulled you out myself. You don't have to explain anything. I believe you. Her lips quivered. No one ever believes me. I do, he said again. And I've already started building a case. Vanessa won't get away with this. I promise you. Eleanor broke down then, quiet sobs shaking her body. Leon wrapped his arms around her carefully, cradling her like something precious and fragile. She didn't resist. She leaned into him, burying her face against his chest, and for the first time in weeks, she felt protected. And for the first time, she believed someone might truly be on her side. The following morning, the sky outside Eleanor's hospital window was soft with streaks of pink and gold, but inside, the air still felt heavy. Eleanor sat upright in bed, pale but composed, her hand protectively resting on her belly. She had barely slept. The echoes of betrayal still clawed at her chest, and her entire body ached. From the fall, the shock, and the slow realization that the man she loved had not only turned his back on her but might have willingly let her die. Leon entered the room quietly, holding a tablet in one hand and 2 cups of tea in the other. He gave her a gentle smile. "Chamomile," he said, placing the cup on the bedside table. "No caffeine." Eleanor tried to return the smile, but it faded too quickly. "Thank you. For everything." He nodded and sat beside her, setting the tablet on his lap. "There's something you need to see, Eleanor. I've waited until you were stable to bring this up, but you deserve the full truth now." She stiffened slightly, bracing herself. "It's about Damien, isn't it?" Leon's expression darkened. "Yes." He tapped on the screen and pulled up a folder marked confidential. "I had my team investigate. Damien and Vanessa weren't just having an affair. They were planning something much bigger. They've been moving your shared assets into shell companies for months, accounts only in Damien's name. Vanessa's been coaching him on how to transfer holdings offshore and eventually file for divorce once the baby is born." Eleanor's face crumpled. "He was planning to leave me with nothing?" Leon nodded solemnly. "Every joint investment, every shared trust fund, even the deed to your home, he's been restructuring it all to make sure you walk away empty-handed. Vanessa's name is tied to several of the dummy accounts. It's clear they were doing this together." He handed her the tablet. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through screenshots, emails between Damien and his lawyer discussing timing the divorce carefully to avoid custody complications, text messages where Vanessa wrote, "Once the baby is out of the way, we'll be free to travel." There were voice recordings, too, audio files of Vanessa's manipulative cooing and Damien's bitter voice saying, "She's too naive to see what's coming." Each word felt like a dagger. Eleanor sat in stunned silence for a long time. Her mouth was dry. Her stomach turned. "I gave him everything," she whispered. "I left my job, my name. I supported him when his father died. And now he wanted to discard me like garbage." Leon placed a steady hand over hers. "You didn't deserve any of this. But you're not powerless, Eleanor. You still have your name, your voice, and a baby who needs a strong mother. I can help you take back what's yours, but only if you're ready." She stared down at her swollen belly, her child moving gently beneath her palm. The tears didn't fall this time. They clung to her lashes but didn't break free. "I've spent so long trying to protect a man who never protected me," she said quietly. "And I stayed silent to keep a picture-perfect life from crumbling." She looked up at Leon then, her eyes no longer filled with only pain, but with something sharper. "Purpose. No more silence," she said. "No more hiding. If Damien wanted to erase me, then I'll make sure the world sees the truth first." Leon leaned back, a glimmer of respect in his gaze. "That's the Eleanor I've always admired." She gave him a faint but determined smile. "Then let's begin." The ballroom at the Grand Aurelia Hotel sparkled with chandeliers and flashed with the lights of press cameras. It was the most anticipated gala of the season, an event meant to celebrate Damian Langford's latest real estate triumph, hosted by none other than Leon Maddox, who had quietly returned to the social scene after weeks of silence. Everyone who was anyone was in attendance. Politicians, celebrities, investors, and reporters, all buzzing with curiosity about Leon's sudden interest in hosting. Vanessa stood beside Damian, radiant in a crimson gown, basking in the glow of flashing bulbs. She clung to Damian's arm like she owned him, laughing loudly, her confidence oozing through every step. Damian, dressed in a tailored black suit, looked smug and self-assured, shaking hands, sipping champagne. Neither of them had any idea what Leon had orchestrated behind the velvet curtain. On stage, a string quartet played softly while Leon stepped up to the microphone, drawing attention with a wave of his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cool and commanding, "before we raise our glasses to tonight's so-called stars, I'd like to dedicate this moment to someone truly deserving." He turned slightly. The spotlight shifted. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Eleanor walked into the ballroom, slow and poised, her back straight, her belly unmistakably visible beneath an elegant ivory dress. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She was radiant, glowing with strength and serenity, despite the betrayal, despite everything she had endured. Every step she took made Vanessa's grin falter and Damian's glass tremble in his hand. Eleanor didn't stop until she reached the stage. She took the microphone from Leon with a polite smile, then turned to face the stunned audience. "Thank you all for coming," she said calmly. "Tonight, I won't be speaking as Damian Langford's wife, or as the mother of his child. I'm here as a woman who was nearly erased, and as someone who refused to stay silent." Leon handed her a small remote. She clicked it. Behind her, a large screen lit up, and the footage began to play. At first, people murmured in confusion. A grainy video of an alley appeared, time-stamped, labeled Surveillance Cam 7A. But the murmurs turned into gasps as they watched Vanessa leading a very pregnant Eleanor into the alley. Then, as the footage showed Vanessa stepping back and Eleanor being shoved into the back of a garbage truck, the entire ballroom fell deathly silent. Eleanor's screams could be faintly heard through the audio. Vanessa's voice echoed, "You were just a placeholder. Damian chose me." The footage ended. All eyes turned toward Damian and Vanessa. Damian went pale. He opened his mouth, struggling. This is taken out of context," he said, voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like." "Shut up," Vanessa snapped, panic in her voice. "You said no one would ever find that footage. You said we were in the clear." Gasps turned to whispers. Phones were out. Reporters were scribbling. Flashbulbs went off. "I never agreed to this," Vanessa shrieked, turning on Damian. "You said we'd disappear before she gave birth. That you were going to leave her." The crowd erupted. Security began to move in. Cameras zoomed in on the couple's meltdown as Damian tried to shush Vanessa and shield her from the media. But it was too late. The world had just witnessed the truth. Eleanor took one calm step forward, her voice clear and unshaken. "You threw me away like trash," she said, locking eyes with Damian. "But I came back shining." A wave of applause followed, some hesitant, some bold. But it grew, moment by moment, into a standing ovation. Leon stepped beside her again, his expression proud. Eleanor didn't smile for the cameras. She didn't need to. Her dignity, her strength, her survival, that was the only headline worth writing. Eleanor sat across from her lawyer in Leon Maddox's towering office suite, sunlight pouring in through the tall glass windows. The ink on the divorce papers was still drying, but her signature was firm, unshaking. For the first time in months, she felt the weight beginning to lift. With Leon's high-powered legal team behind her, what Damian had once tried to strip from her, her home, her assets, her dignity, was now being returned piece by piece. The evidence had been undeniable: fraudulent financial transfers, concealed accounts, a documented conspiracy to abandon a pregnant spouse. The court didn't hesitate. Eleanor was awarded full control of the marital estate, and most importantly, sole custody of her unborn child. Damien didn't fight. He couldn't, not after the footage from the gala went viral, not after sponsors pulled out of his company, not after investors walked away in disgust. His empire crumbled quickly. Stock prices plummeted. News headlines devoured the scandal. Langford legacy tarnished by affair and attempted cover-up. Social media turned on him overnight. No one wanted to be associated with a man who stood by while his mistress tried to murder his pregnant wife. And Vanessa. She was gone. The day after the gala, she disappeared from the city. Rumors swirled about her boarding a private jet with a forged passport. No one really cared where she went. She was a name people would only remember in whispers, shameful, infamous, and ultimately irrelevant. But Eleanor didn't spend her time following the destruction. She chose something different: peace. Leon offered her a quiet estate in the countryside, nestled between golden fields and rolling hills, far from the media and the noise. It had once belonged to his grandmother, he said, a place where he spent summers as a child. It's yours for as long as you need it, he told her. A place to breathe again. And so she accepted. The first days in the country were quiet. Just her, the wind, and the soft thump of her baby's kicks. She walked barefoot through the garden, drank warm tea on the porch, and let the pain unravel bit by bit with every sunrise. The nightmares began to fade. She began to laugh again, quietly at first, then louder. Leon visited often, always respectful of her space but never distant. He brought her books. He helped build the nursery. They spent long evenings talking under the stars, sharing stories, healing wounds that neither of them realized had run so deep. And slowly, without pressure or pretense, something began to blossom between them. Not a romance born of tragedy, but of genuine care, quiet understanding, and mutual admiration. One afternoon, as Eleanor sat on the porch knitting a soft blanket for her baby, Leon approached her with a small smile. He knelt beside her chair and placed a hand over hers. "You don't have to face anything alone ever again," he said softly. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. The days in the countryside unfolded like pages from a forgotten fairy tale, soft, slow, and healing. The chaos of the city was far behind, and with each passing moment, Eleanor found herself breathing easier, sleeping deeper, smiling more freely. The house that once felt like a borrowed escape was slowly becoming a home, a sanctuary of peace, surrounded by wildflowers and open skies. Leon never hovered. He showed up with groceries some days, warm soup on others. He built a swing in the backyard and fixed the creaky door in the nursery. He never asked for thanks. He never reminded her of what he had done for her. He simply showed up. Steady, quiet, unwavering. Eleanor had never known this kind of love. Not romantic, not demanding, but gentle and deeply present. He didn't flinch when her voice cracked. He didn't pity her when she cried mid-conversation. He didn't need her to be perfect or whole or strong all the time. Instead, he listened. He made space for her pain. And when she couldn't speak, he simply sat beside her, letting silence speak on her behalf. Their bond grew naturally, without grand declarations or labels. They cooked together in the evenings, walked through the golden fields after dinner, and sometimes read books on the porch until the stars came out. Eleanor laughed more often now, soft and genuine laughter that warmed the walls of the house. One afternoon, they were sitting on a picnic blanket beneath the shade of a giant oak tree. Leon had just made a terrible joke about his lack of gardening skills, and Eleanor leaned back, chuckling. "You're lucky I didn't make you grow the herbs yourself," she teased, swatting a leaf off his shoulder. He grinned, eyes twinkling. "If you had, we'd be eating wild grass and pretending it's basil." Moments like these made her forget the trauma that once swallowed her whole. With Leon, she felt safe. Seen. Later that night, the air was crisp and still. Eleanor stood by the window in her nightgown, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding a warm cup of tea. Leon joined her quietly, offering his quiet company. The moonlight bathed the room in a silver glow, casting soft shadows across the floor. She turned to him, voice barely above a whisper. You saved me, she said. From the trash. Literally. But you treated me like treasure. Leon looked at her, emotion flickering in his usually unreadable eyes. He stepped closer, lifting a hand to gently tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That's because that's what you are, he said softly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You've always been gold, Eleanor. They just didn't know how to see it. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his words sink in. In that moment, surrounded by stillness and sincerity, Eleanor knew she was no longer defined by what she had survived. She was defined by what she had reclaimed, her strength, her dignity, and now, possibly, love. The morning was quiet, almost sacred. Dew clung to the grass outside Eleanor's countryside estate, and the sky blushed with early sunlight. Inside, the world stood still as Eleanor held her newborn daughter for the first time, warm, wrinkled, and perfect. Her tiny eyes fluttered open for a moment, and Eleanor whispered the name she had chosen long before the chaos, long before the betrayal. Hope. Hope, for the life they now shared. Hope, for the strength that grew in Eleanor's bones when she was left to rot. Hope, for every woman who had been cast aside, bruised but never broken. Leon stood nearby, emotion glistening in his eyes as he looked at the two loves of his life. He didn't speak, he simply placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder and kissed the top of their daughter's head. This was no longer just healing. This was the beginning of something new. Something enduring. Weeks later, Eleanor held a press conference, not orchestrated by lawyers or publicists, but on her own terms. A soft blue banner behind her read, "The Hope Foundation for Women Reclaimed." Cameras flashed, and reporters whispered. She stood tall, dressed in soft white, with Hope in her arms and Leon by her side. "My name is Eleanor Langford," she began, her voice steady. "And I know what it feels like to be discarded. To be betrayed, not just by someone you love, but by a system that teaches women to stay silent." The room fell into a hush. "I was 7 months pregnant when I was thrown into the back of a garbage truck by someone who saw me as a threat. Not a person, not a mother, not a woman, but an inconvenience. And worse, the man I loved had planned to leave me penniless while he moved on with her. That could have been the end of my story." She paused, eyes scanning the audience. But it wasn't. Leon stepped closer, placing a supportive hand on her back. The baby stirred slightly, her tiny fingers gripping Eleanor's blouse. "I survived. My daughter survived. And now I stand here not to ask for pity, but to offer a hand to every woman who's ever been thrown away, stepped on, or silenced. This foundation is for them. It's for the woman hiding her bruises under makeup. For the wife being told she's crazy for asking questions. For the mother abandoned when she needed support the most." She held Hope a little higher, smiling. "This is my daughter. Her name is Hope. And like her, I was born again. From ashes, from pain, from betrayal." A murmur of awe swept through the crowd. Reporters lowered their pens. Some even wiped away tears. Leon leaned in, whispering something only Eleanor could hear. She smiled, then turned back to the microphone. "I am not a victim. I am not a headline. I am a survivor who chose to rise. And I promise you, for every woman listening right now, you can rise too." As the cameras clicked and applause slowly rose, Eleanor stepped back. Leon took her hand in his, the other gently cradling their daughter. And as they stood together on that stage, no longer broken, no longer afraid, the final words whispered through the minds of everyone watching, like a line of poetry etched in gold. They tried to throw her away, but she rose like gold from the garbage.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.